Okay. Yeah, it's the well, okay, beginning of recording. Hello. I am Kevin Griffin. This is let's say July 16th, 2024. So we are um you know, continuing to gather on these Tuesday, I will call them mornings from where I am, but they might not be mornings for you. And we are going to sit for about 20 minutes and then we'll talk a bit. Um, so I suggest that you sit back, relax, settle. I'm actually going to read a little bit that I wrote about concentration after we sit. So one of the things, though, that I like to point out to people is that holding your body very still helps concentration. There's actually a practice that they do on, I think they do on Goenka's retreats where they make like, I think they call them vow hours, where you vow to not move at all for an hour. I'm not going to subject anyone to such a commitment, but just to see, first of all, if you can bring your body into a very still state. And then as you're sitting, notice the very subtle ways in which you might move the body. Now, the breath itself moved the body, so absolute stillness is not sustainable. But here we're talking about intentional movement. And our bodies can often just seem to move on their own as we're meditating. Your head might tilt, or you might tip forward or back. And then there are those moments of restlessness when you want to just shift your posture a little bit. Or there's an itch you want to scratch. And when we can restrain these more intentional movements, it has a way of kind of bringing into relief, bringing into more clarity the movements of mind. And we can easily see that there's a connection between the body and the mind, the movements of body and the movements of mind. So just connecting with the breath, feeling the body breathing. when the mind wanders, when you notice that, just gently coming back. Emphasis on gentle. Be kind to yourself. Not here to achieve something as a meditator. There's no judgment involved. Just allowing the body to settle, allowing the mind to settle, and not judging when those things don't happen. As we work with stillness in the body, we'll feel the pull to move. Much like the pull of the mind to move, much like the pull of addiction to act on craving. And so this practice becomes a training in restraint, in being with that pull, that desire, allowing it, not fighting it or resisting it, but not acting on it. So this is the practice of mindfulness, to feel, to be with, to allow without reactivity, without being swept away. So the sitting practice becomes a model in a sense, or a framework we work with in our lives, learning to live with our own impulse, learning to let go. as a period of meditation goes on, we might lose energy or engagement and find ourselves just drifting into daydreams, fantasy. So in those moments, if you can, to just kind of restart, start again, bring the attention into the body, back to the breath, settle again, recommit. radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outward and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will. Right. I've been leading this class for over 4 years now, and so I've um, I've never stuck to a kind of meditation script, um, mainly because it just feels like I want to keep it fresh, um, and it allows me to sort of in different classes just get into different nuances of practice. So if you've just dropped in, it's like, oh, this is what the meditation's about. No, this was just like sort of a random topic that I got into today, which was the stillness of the body, which I think is actually a really useful one to explore, one that often gets overlooked in practice. But if you're, just starting to come and drop in with us, just to know that you'll get different little tips and suggestions depending on what comes to mind each week. Um, Someone just decided to show up for just the talk, skip the meditation. As I said I was going to do, and oftentimes I say I'm going to give a talk on something before I meditate, and then during the meditation, I'm like, oh, but I'd rather talk about this. But anyway, I'm going to first let me tell you a little bit about this project. I don't know if I've mentioned it on here, probably have. Um, it's just I decided to do a book on the 11th step. Um, yeah, obviously, all my books talk about meditation to some degree, but I thought, well, maybe this would be just something, you know, that would be purely focused on meditation without getting into too much about, um, the extended teachings of Buddhism, and that can get a lot more complicated. So it starts with just a brief kind of my take on Bill Wilson's approach to meditation, and then the step itself, kind of just going through the language of the step, and then I have a kind of the entertainment portion of the book is the story of my evolution as a meditator from the beginning until sort of into my sobriety. But then the rest of it is just you know, how to meditate and different aspects of that. And so I just added a part that I realized I needed. So I thought I would read from that. And so it's, rough. It's a first draft. And there is one sentence in here that I have not been able to solve. It's about counting breaths. So when we get there, you'll see what an awkward sentence it is. But anyway, and this section of the book follows kind of the introduction to mindfulness, and that's called where I kind of just introduce the basics of meditation and how to practice, and then I have a section called More on Mindfulness, and then a section called Mindfulness of Breathing on the Anapanasati, and so this section is called More on Concentration. When most people hear the word meditation, the quality they think of is concentration. They imagine a serene, empty mind, perhaps one infused with bliss. This kind of state isn't the goal of mindfulness meditation, though it can arise with lots of practice. For the busy-minded, easily distracted Western student of meditation, concentration is probably the most difficult quality to develop. It requires patience, persistence, and determination. Some people have a particular talent for concentration, while most of us must work hard for it. What is the importance of concentration in mindfulness practice? Mindfulness brings us more fully into the present moment. Concentration lets us more fully penetrate that moment. While a moment of mindfulness helps us to see clearly what is arising, sustained, concentrated mindfulness allows us to see more deeply. The reality we are experiencing becomes more vivid and stands out in starker relief. The pleasure we experience with concentration can actually distract us from its more vital purpose, cultivating insight. As the mind becomes more still, the three characteristics of existence, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self, become clearer. Less caught in our personal drama, these truths come to the forefront of our consciousness. While we can see these realities in ordinary mindfulness meditation, concentration makes them clearer, more obvious. That vision is what leads to transformative insight. Time is perhaps the most important factor in developing concentration. Whether on a multi-day retreat or simply a longer morning meditation period, time helps the mind and body settle. There's no tool that creates instant concentration. Nonetheless, there are practices that can help. First is what's called aim and sustain. This means that we take particular care in bringing the attention to the object of concentration, typically the breath. In this way, rather than just being aware that we are breathing, we try to feel the specific details of the sensations and follow the whole breath from start to finish. That is the aiming. When we try to connect to the next breath with continuous awareness, then we try to connect to the next breath with continuous awareness, sustaining. When we can get this kind of attention going for a few minutes, a qualitative shift in concentration can develop. Another way of working on concentration is to use a repetitive or structured meditation object. Counting breaths and using mantras are two common repetitive practices. With the breath, we typically count up from 1 to 10 breaths, then start again at 1. If we lose count, we simply go back to 1. Mantras are even more simple, usually a sacred word we repeat over and over in the mind. Both practices have the tendency to quiet the mind by letting it settle into a simple repeating pattern. An example of a structured practice is loving kindness meditation. Here we use phrases, images, and the breath to move through a series of categories of people to whom we send loving thoughts. This kind of meditation gives the mind a lot to do, thus helping to keep it on track. Now, in parentheses, guided instructions for all these practices are found later in the book. Two other factors that influence concentration are posture and stillness. Upright posture on a stable surface is important. Slumping into a soft couch tends to make for a dull mind, which is not conducive to the clarity needed for concentration. Stillness of body supports stillness of mind. When we are able to hold the body with no movement, it has the effect of bringing any movements of mind into relief, thus allowing us to quickly come back to the object. Technically, concentration practice is distinct from mindfulness meditation. Nonetheless, it's apparent that in order to sustain concentration, you need to know if the mind is on the object or not. That means that you have to be mindful of where the attention is. Mindfulness has a broader purpose than concentration alone, but it is also a part of such a practice. And that's just a little section. Because I know that a lot of people struggle with and I think feel um, frustrated around meditation. Someone's working on our house outside. Hello. Um, and it's easy to sort of um, judge your meditation based on how concentrated you are. Uh, and it's a common kind of fallacy that we're supposed to stop thinking, right? Uh, there are some other people here who teach meditation, and anybody who's ever taken that role has encountered this question that people bring up, like, how do I stop thinking? And you have to kind of tell them, like, that's not what we're trying to do, you know. Um, and that in fact, what a lot of the value that I think we get out of mindfulness practice is in observing the contents of thoughts and the process of thoughts. So thoughts aren't a problem or an impediment to mindfulness meditation. They are actually the material that we can learn from. It's not the end point. The point of mindfulness meditation isn't to, um, study my thoughts. That's not the ultimate goal of it, but that is an element of it. And it's a useful one. You don't want to turn your meditation into a constant like analysis, like it becomes like a therapy. Like, what am I thinking about? Why am I thinking that? Where did that thought come from? However, observing those things and asking those questions periodically, um, it can be very revealing, and it actually then can help to move beyond the thinking, right? Because it helps us to see that the thoughts don't have um, the credibility that we ordinarily give them. We start to see through the the messages. We start to see the uh, these patterns, and we see them as patterns that are not me, that don't define me, and we do see somewhat where they come from, the wounds and traumas sometimes that are behind them. Um, Nonetheless, getting back to concentration, there's a real, as I mentioned, like a real pleasure in concentration, and that's the thing that I think we're all kind of chasing in our meditation, that like moment of peace, that like like because it's hard to be a human being. I mean, I know people like to talk about how crazy our world is, but the Buddha 2,500 years ago talked about how greed, hatred, and delusion were the driving forces behind ordinary human consciousness. And so uh, we're not really in a unique historical moment in that sense. I mean, of course, every moment is unique and every historical moment is unique, but it's also generic. It's we're just seeing greed, hatred, and delusion out there manifesting. And so, yes, so our meditation then, we naturally want to be relieved of that stress, of that angst that comes with being a human being and being a human being who's living in a or living in difficult times, difficult circumstances. And I don't discount the importance of that. I mean, I think that is one of the reasons we all meditate. is to is in the simplest terms to suffer less, because greed, hatred, and delusion are what cause our suffering. So so then what we find is that when we meet those qualities in the mind and body, and we meet them with kindness and awareness, they lose power because they depend upon our not seeing them. Just like addiction depends upon us not seeing that we're just being driven by a cycle of craving that has no ultimate benefit, it has no end. And so when we get to that place where we can come to these qualities with kindness, with awareness, breathe with them, then what then tranquility, which is kind of the precursor of concentration, quite naturally arises. We don't have to make it happen. Again, this is why I mentioned some of the concentration practices. But to me, the main task is to just show up and be with and meet things with kindness, with awareness, meet our experiences with kindness and awareness. And that naturally out of that will arise tranquility. And once we attain tranquility, once we arrive at tranquility, it's not a big step to concentration. Then it's a matter of applying a little more effort to the object, the meditation object. That's where the aiming and sustaining really becomes operable. When the mind is really busy and scattered, it can be very difficult to aim and sustain for any period of time. So the first thing to me is to meet the present moment in a way that allows us to be at ease with it just as it is, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And then once having met it in that way, as I say, then there is that possibility of some calming that then can move more deeply into concentration. I hope that stayed. I just trying to stay on track there. Felt I was kind of wandering, but trying to keep it online, and a little distracting having someone bang scraping on my windows, but pleasant to have the windows cleaned. Chris, I see you've got your hand up for the second time, so
Yeah, sorry, it's just
not at
I can't
all.
stop fixating on it.
You can't stop
There's a
fixating
reflection on
on
your
what?
glasses of this like spherical thing, and it covers perfectly over your irises, and it's been tripping me out the whole time. I don't know
Uh,
if anyone's seeing it, but it's
oh, I'm
oh my God, it's
sorry.
happening right now. It's super crazy looking.
That's,
Other than that,
I've got my circle light there.
that must be it.
That
Okay.
is what I believe that is what you're seeing. And so, and I don't always use it, but the other night I was on Spirit Rock and they said, "Oh, there's a shadow on your face." So I was like, "Well, let me use this." So
Now
I'm
there's
sorry you're
lights in
tripping
your
out.
eyes. Um, did was there something at Spirit Rock last Friday at in the
Y-
evening?
Yeah, it's just on Zoom still. I'm going to
Okay.
get it live hopefully
Cool.
soon, but yeah,
What
it's
time is that
it's
again?
it's it's 7:15, the second Friday of each month.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. I need to remind you of that. Other than that, I don't really have anything wise to say about what you had was reading. I was just too distracted. So thank you for letting me get that out.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Thank you for letting me know. Really, constructive feedback is welcomed. Deborah,
Good morning.
morning.
The first thing I wanted to say was that early on in my listening, seeing you, I learned the importance of stillness of body.
Mm.
And that really helps me. I meditate with other people, and they often say, "Oh, I had an itch. It was too hot, too cold." And for me, it's just a given that I don't pay attention to my body. It just stays where it is. And if I have an itch, I recognize that, you know, if I don't, I can either concentrate on it, and then it goes away, or it goes away. So big
Yeah.
deal. And then second of all, I have been watching The Bear as well, and I had a really hard time with it
It
at
was
the
hard. I know. I was like, can we get
and
this episode over, please? I'm
and
turning off my ring light for
it's
Chris.
nice because I can't binge watch it because of that.
Right.
Um, and so I have a long history in restaurants, and so
Uh,
I know, and I finally read a review when the third season started, but she was actually reviewing the second season because she's an adult child of an alcoholic.
uh,
And that explains so much of the angst.
yeah.
And I just thought, I put my Dharma lens on to watch it now, and I'm going to catch up someday. Thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah. Robin wanted to know what is the bear. It's a TV show about a chef. Thank you, Paula. Excellent. Exactly. It's about a restaurant in Chicago, yeah, I mean it's a beautiful. The first two seasons were really incredible, and then I thought that. I mean, my wife and I watched these things together, and we're both writers, and we're very interested in writing. So we were both like, I was saying as I washed the dishes last night, they, it's like they ran out of ideas for the story, even though they've got tons of stories going. Like, what was the problem? Anyway, we should not be talking about TV shows on here. That is the rule. Breaking the rule. No TV. Bill, nice to see you.
Hi, Kevin. How's it going? I personally like the trippy eyes. I mean, I just kind of like just on them, and that's
Okay, we'll take a poll.
yeah, it's personal preference, I guess.
I wasn't saying they're
I, I,
bad. They were just trippy.
Oh boy. No,
I just
it's
I love
it's
your
cool.
topic on your talk though about concentration. It's been one of my things that I've been really kind of working on in meditation for quite a while, and I've often thought I'd go to see. I know that like Philip Moffitt out at Spirit Rock has like a 9 day retreat specifically on basically on concentration of other. I can handle 5 days of that stuff, but I can't do 9 days. That's just out of the question. So I got to do it
Well,
on my own.
hey.
I
What
five
do you
days.
mean never? I can't. What does that mean? I can't meditate for that. That's just in your head, man.
It's
Come on.
no, it's the body that hurts. But anyway, that's not.
Well, you can
Anyway,
always, take a break. You can lie down. You can change your posture.
I realize that. Yeah. I find myself quite often in that zone that you talked about, where it's kind of like a spacious thing where there's nothing happening. You're just there, and it's like, oh, and I become aware of it, and I just say to myself, wow, I'm in that space again. And I just let it roll. I mean, I know that I don't try to. I think I talked to you about it one time, a long time ago, and just said that, you know, not try to cling on to that feeling. Just it's there, okay. And then all of a sudden, I'm into something else after a while, and it's
Right.
disappeared, it's dissipated, and it's gone somewhere else. But yeah, but it's an incredibly peaceful, cool place to be. But like I said, I try not to let it myself cling to that idea or that those thoughts that are going through me at the time. So
It's
anyway,
a it's a tricky thing, but I'll say this, that when we get into a quieter space like that, one way of thinking about it is that the self, this or selfing, is quieting down and it's less dominant. And that actually means that you can apply more effort because the problem with effort when we're already agitated is that it comes usually and very often comes out of a grasping or an aversion. Like, my mind's really busy. I want to stop it, right?
Yeah.
And so there's kind of self behind it, right? And when there's self behind the effort in meditation, it's just creating more trouble. It doesn't really work. However, and I only discovered this through practice, when things are quieter, you can actually apply that aiming and sustaining more intensely because it's not grasping at that moment. It's just connecting. It's just being with the experience, and there isn't this like need happening. And so this is I think that isn't the Buddha never says this, but I've I've just kind of come to believe that this is what right when he talks about right effort, that it actually was he meant that you can apply this right effort when you are already fairly, not advanced, but at a certain state
Mhm.
that he didn't really. I mean, I'm just like projecting about what the Buddha was thinking, but we can do these things that he wasn't really thinking about the person who's like really distracted already and that who's gonna like apply effort. He didn't because it doesn't really work to apply a lot of effort when you're in that kind of mind state. So just to notice, so the reason I'm saying this is I want you to apply if you get to a place of tranquility where things are quieting down, don't just like be like, oh, this is cool, I'll hang out here. Like actually push it a little bit. All
Mhm.
right. You can go further. Actually, the door is opening at that point. You haven't arrived anywhere. You're just moving, and so keep pointing towards a deeper state.
Yeah, I've done that on occasion, just to
Oh,
see where it would take me,
yeah,
But then, as we all know, in meditation, you're often running on something else after a little while anyway. So, yeah. But I understand completely what you're saying. That's cool. It really is. Yeah. So
good. Thank you.
open
Just
those doors. All right. Take
yeah,
care.
yeah. Just wanted to. And Elise, I saw your hand was up. You brought it down, but I'm not letting you get off that easy.
Thank you, Kevin. A lot of what you just talked about was kind of what I was thinking. I've been struggling a bit since I got back from retreat, and I think a lot of it is what you were talking about in terms of meditation, but I'm kind of experiencing that just in my like general life and recovery too. I'm I'm kind of having these thoughts and putting effort and grasping at things and I haven't I've been working through this with on my own some and also with my sponsor trying to get to a place where I am meeting those thoughts and feelings with kindness and
Mhm.
awareness and um, then hopefully getting to a place where I can move forward with that, not in this place of um, I don't know, just how you said. I mean, the way you described the grasping when the self is behind. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what I've been doing, and so I appreciate what you read and shared. I know it was talking about meditation, but it spoke a lot to me about where I am just in general right now too. So thank you.
yeah. Thanks for being willing to share, even when you had changed your mind. Yeah, I mean that's it, right? Our practice is not separate from our lives. It's meant to be a mirror and uh, uh, something that winds up being a model for, what we do in our meditation. We try to bring that into our daily lives, and knowing that we're never going to be able to do it on the same level of intensity. But I do think like it helps a lot in the midst of a day to be able to stop and breathe and watch what am I doing with my mind right now, you know? Um, and what am and I can't help but, acknowledge that a lot of what's troubling to me right now is the world situation, the political situation, and that, I hear something, I read something, and, you know, uh, anger, fear, sadness, come up. And I just have to really take refuge in those moments and say, like, this is not the end of the world. This is, my life is okay right now. I'm okay right now. I mean, I was like, and the neighbors across the street, like yesterday, were like, well, what's going to happen? And I was yelling at her. I was like, I think there's a silent majority, which was like Richard Nixon's line, right? But, like, I have to talk myself up. I have to literally talk to myself and tell myself, like, you know, it's okay. Nothing, right now it's all about fear. And that's like, it's all about projecting. And, I have to just find some joy in my life and some peace. So, yeah, it's the same thing. Meditation, not meditation. Um, let's keep going.
Hey,
Vicky.
Kevin. Oh, did you want me to raise my hand? Sorry.
Well, I didn't. Yeah.
Okay,
There's a couple
I can
people.
wait.
We'll get okay because I don't have to be anywhere till 1 o'clock today, so I'll keep going here. Vicky, go ahead.
Yeah, great. All right. So, hi. Yeah,
Hi.
good to be here. Um, Loved it. So, when you were talking just now, responding, it was like, okay, yep, there's inventory, right? There's fear. Yep. Then there's noticing it. It's being mindful of all that. And then there's that sixth step, that entirely ready thing. Now, at the Southern Dharma retreat a couple of years ago, I really got it. It's like entirely ready to have this character defect, this intense fear lift that it's possible, in a moment to have the experience of these these unwholesome mind states to relax, to I mean, you're the big let go guy. And, it's like, yeah, that the possibility is there. Not to say that I can stamp my fingers and it happens, but that occasionally in the concentrated states, particularly the entirely ready, this pure sort of a pure state, it's an experience, right? It's a real, and the relief of it, the refuge in it, is it just keeps coming, it keeps me coming back. I'm like, very grateful for the refuge. It helps. It helps so much. There was a young woman who was in a meeting on Sunday, and she was like, new and kind of going, oh God, I can't stand it, that kind of thing, right? And she put her fingers up to her, head and went like this and said, "How do I turn it off?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I know what you mean."
Yeah.
Right. And here you are in a meeting. So it's lovely to be able to sort of bring some of this stuff to people who could use it. Yeah, including myself. So thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. I saw you and John's names on the roster for Southern Dharma. So, and yeah, entirely ready is a really great topic because it just challenges us to see where the resistance is, right? And to admit that there is resistance. It's like, oh yeah, I'm ready to let go. It's like, are you? Am I? Hmm. Thank you. Robin.
Hi.
Hi.
I first of all, Kevin, thank you. You are so freaking funny. You crack me up, and I love that. I appreciate your funny. Um, and then to go back to this meditation, and it was touched on a couple of the comments and your responses, but I've been also, as someone said, okay, I can notice I'm hot and not comfortable. I can notice I'm cold and not comfortable. Getting better at that, even to the point where, like, I've been always really bad at scratching mosquito bites, really bad at it. It's helping me not to scratch my mosquito bites because I'm like, okay, that's itchy. I don't want to scratch. It's noticing instead of just impulsively. And then something happened during the meditation. I felt like I had an insect crawling on me, which for me is usually quite the jumpy thing. And I managed to not do anything, which that's huge for me. Is that, is that a thing? I imagine it is. Like, there's a mosquito or a spider or an ant or something. I know we're not supposed to, in Buddhism, you don't want to kill them, but
You
I
can kill
just don't want them
mosquitoes.
crawling on me. But I sat there and I don't know if it was on me or not, or if it was just an itch.
Could be in your mind too.
So what do you got?
Yeah, perception it becomes altered in meditative states at times, and so that it can feel as if things are happening that aren't happening. So that's pretty much what I would say about that. Yeah, I don't know what else I can say about it. I actually I want to address Flo left a question in the chat. So before I take more audible questions, I'm just going to read this and just to acknowledge, I know certain people have to leave at 11. So I'm it's not that people don't love me, that the numbers are going down as to how many here are here. It's that they had to go. When you are tired, sleepy, and concentration is hard to sustain, does the sleepiness become your object of mindfulness? Same with irritation, restlessness, to witness that dullness or restlessness and watch it, question mark. So I could say that technically, as from a mindfulness standpoint, you could say ideally you would want to pay attention to the sleepiness, but there's an inherent contradiction in that sleepiness is a non-attentive state. And so it's very difficult to be mindful of sleepiness past its initial state. So mostly, well, so when if and this particularly is true on retreat for me, that when I get into a sleepy state, I do try to sit with it, but I also take countervailing measures. Particularly, I sit with my eyes open, and I'll really hold my posture strongly upright. And so, and that experience is unpleasant. It's really unpleasant to be falling asleep when you're trying to meditate. At least I find it so. And so then I'm sitting with the aversion and I'm breathing with the aversion. And the last component is that I trust and, well, I know that it's impermanent And I trust that if I stay awake, the energy will shift. And it very often does in a period of meditation. On a retreat, we're talking about like a 45-minute period. And so if I stay awake and I strengthen my posture, open my eyes and sit, what often happens is there's like a dip. This will be like an after lunch or after breakfast meditation sometime when you're sort of dull. There'll be a dip. But if I just stay present, that the energy will actually come back. And I think that mindfulness has this energetically balancing quality if you can sustain it. So, I mean, that's pretty different from uh, irritation and restlessness. Those qualities, I would be much more just inclined to, penetrate with mindfulness into the felt experience of that as much as possible. Breathe with it so that I'm staying in my body. I'm not getting caught in the aversion to it. And I'm just feeling it as an energy, an unpleasant energy that's moving through. Yeah, I mean, this idea, the Buddha puts out of like just be mindful of whether things are pleasant or unpleasant or neutral is a really interesting one because it pulls you out of this judging like it's good or bad. It's pleasant or unpleasant, and that's just a really good thing to program into your thinking about experiences. Just like programming into your thinking that everything is impermanent is very helpful. Um, so that's where I would go with that stuff is to just try to be with it, breathe with it, remember impermanence because it's going to pass, and and you know whatever the last thing I said was. I lost it. Thank you. Um, Erlene, hi, finally. Still there? There we go.
Yes,
All
thank
right.
you. Yeah, so I have been really using my practice. Um, I got long-term sobriety and I go to a 12-step meditation group two times a week. And I've even got my secular group reading your living kindness book at this
Well,
point, which is super cool. They get a little frustrated. It's like, what is this bodhicitta? It's like, we talked about that. We can go back. Yeah, but the the place that I'm using my meditation and recovery the most right now is equanimity
mm,
around the political upheaval. Um, and, really, you know, just really trying to invoke a positive outcome. And I feel like I mean, putting more positive energy in it than entertaining or staying in the craziness is really what I see as our only hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I don't know what you were talking about earlier, and I mean, I can really see my addiction when I get caught up in what's going on, who's got the answers, who's telling me the truth, who's, all of that. So I just wanted to, I don't know, bring that to the table. Thanks.
yeah. Thanks, Erlene. Good note to end on. And yeah, the end of the sit, I recited the words from the Metta Sutta and rather than teaching the sort of traditional loving kindness practice lately, I've been just using the phrases from the suttas to as offerings when people are doing metta, when we're doing metta on retreats and classes, and for myself, just letting the words move through my mind, and so this phrase, radiating kindness over the entire world. One of the things to remember is that when the Buddha talks about the world, he's talking about your body. He's talking about your own mind body. That's one way he talks about the world. And so I take that instruction to have these dual meanings. And so I begin metta practice by saying, radiating kindness over the entire world, and imagining that I'm just filling my body. I mean, you can say mind, but I mean, I just think of it as my body because I can feel that over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded. I kind of feel, it permeating my whole body. And do that a couple times, repeating those phrases, and then radiating, imagining it radiating out over the world. I don't do a lot of individual focus, much more like just radiant. If I start getting into people, it gets more complicated. But when I kind of hold the planet and just all the beings and all the suffering and all the joy and the beauty, it's easier for me to just rest in that kind of equanimity around that. So I'll say this phrase one more time for you guys, just to close. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will. So may all beings be free from suffering. Thanks for coming and hanging out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Namaste.
Kevin.
All right, guys.
Take care.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Okay.
Thank you so much.